Well, we never allowed fentanyl. Oh, wait a minute, we do. Pours over the border. Why do we have a military again? I can't remember. What? Why do we have a military? Oh, right, I remember. We have a military so we can enrich the military-industrial complex and the contractors who make all the weaponry, who then turn around and fund the campaigns of the people running for elected office in D.C. And for all the generals that get out of the Pentagon and then need to go have a job so they can double dip both on their pension from us, the taxpayer, and now from the military-industrial complex. Let's see, why else do we have a standing army? Oh, I remember. So we can be involved in nation building for the New World Order. Let's see, why else do we have a standing military? Oh, wait a minute. So we can fight wars for corporations. Now, we'll never tell the people that. We'll tell them it's for patriotism and God and country, don't you know? When it comes really down to corporations, big bankers, executive titans, using their power and their influence to get our nation entangled in foreign places for minerals and mineral rights. The globalist, they want to make sure they have certain people in power who will go along with the New World Order's agenda, the green agenda. Globalism, not nationalism. These are the reasons we have a standing army, I guess, because you would think all the reasons you'd have a standing army would be to stop drugs from flowing into your country, stop sex trafficking, stop military-age males of our enemies pouring into the country, stop drug cartels, gangs. All the reasons you'd have a standing military, we don't use that for those purposes. Occasionally, we read about some National Guard being sent to the border. That's just window dressing, folks. That's window dressing. If we really cared about national security, if we really cared about the function of a standing army, none of the things I've detailed to you would be happening. It'd be like, we got the safest country in the world. We don't allow the drugs to flow over the border. We don't allow sex trafficking to happen. Gangs that come over here and are involved in what they call some kind of tourism. What's the word they're calling it now? There's some kind of tourism where they're going around and they come here for a short period of time and then they rob middle and upper class neighborhoods. Crime tourism. The gangs, highly orchestrated, highly skilled. So why is it we pay all these taxes again? So we got a standing military. Pay all these taxes, in part, for a standing military that really does nothing for you or for me today. A few things here and there we use the military for, that I'm thankful for, but by and large, the most obvious, we don't use them for that. Now, I'm not talking about using the military to police the American people. But I am talking about using it to police our borders. I am talking about using it to police our shores. I am talking about using it to snatch up enemies in the country, foreign enemies. Andrew Jackson warned us. He went on to say, look at this, quote, "It's apparent that no system of the kind can ever be enforced which will not absorb a considerable portion of the money to be distributed in salaries and commissions to the agents employed in the process," end quote. That's right. And look how big the federal bureaucracy is. The millions of people that work for the feds. And the great health care, and all the credit cards. You and I read about all the government credit cards and all the massive amounts of money being spent on trips, personal items by these federal employees holding federal credit cards. Nothing happened to any of them. I'm not reading a report where they're being arrested. I'm not reading a report where they're being sent a bill with the threat of confiscating their bank account or putting a lien against their home until that money's paid back that you used for your personal items. I'm not reading of any of that. Are you? Not yet. Not today. Not May 30th, 2025. I'm not. Andrew Jackson told us this would happen. He didn't even know about credit cards. Quote, the possession and use of the property out of which this surplus was created belonged to the people, but the government has transferred its possession to incorporated banks, whose interest and effort is to make large profits out of its use, end quote. That's right. The banks. Greed, banksters. Many who get us into war. And apparently, the banks in Europe aren't too happy right now, as they're apparently on the verge of collapse economically. So are the bankers pushing for war? Is this why the crazies in Europe are giving more and more weaponry to Ukraine and lifting their limits on how far they can shoot their rockets and missiles into Russia? Because I think they want war. They're dancing to the tune of the people that put them in power. Bankers want it for greed. Governments want it because they can get away with a lot during the fog of war. The people will cry out due to shortage of food and disruption of critical infrastructure, and they'll cry out. The government steps forward and says, well, we can do this and that, but it'll require this, an ever bigger government, less liberty, less freedom. And the people in a crisis will surrender those liberties and freedoms for what they think is a little more safety and security. The bankers love it for greed. The government people love it for more power, control. The globalists love it for nation building, because we got to get rid of guys like Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin apparently is not going to go along with the green agenda. He's not going to go along with the idea of the Great Reset. He's not going to go along with the idea of LGBTQ. I'm not here defending Putin, but Putin seems to be pretty nationalistic. He wants a strong Russia. He doesn't want a bunch of queers prancing and dancing in his military, in his schools. No, that's for America. America's all about that. Putin doesn't want to break up the family over there. And I don't think he's doing it for religious reasons. Some say, oh, he's strong in the Orthodox Church over there. Okay, maybe that plays into it politically, but Putin's doing this for the purpose, not religiously. He's doing it for the purpose of sustainability of his nation. Because he doesn't have a suicidal agenda for his nation, like we do in America. Our nation's committing suicide. But Putin's not apparently going to go along with the global order, so he's got to go. That's, I think, what's going on in part. Isn't it interesting? The bankers, the bureaucrats, the globalists, they all go to war for different reasons. They all benefit. They all feast off the carcass of the taxpayer who funds it all. And then you had inflation. There's no, I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's no reason Americans should be struggling if you have a decent paying job, gainfully employed, you work hard, you have self-control, you don't gamble, squander your money, you don't have a drinking problem, a drug problem. If you don't have any of that, and you're gainfully employed, and you know how to save Spend wisely. Live within your budget. Every American should be living at least a middle class lifestyle, like they did in the 1950s. You could work at a factory, and your wife stayed at home, and you lived in a very middle class home, drove a very nice middle class car, wore very nice middle class clothes, took very nice middle class vacations, had very nice middle class Christmases. What happened? Government grew and grew and grew. Taxation increased. Money, debt, and the massive theft of inflation. Yet Andrew Jackson warned us over and over. He wasn't the only one. A lot of these guys wanted to fund the central government with tariffs, like President Trump wants to do. I hope we can get back to it before we go to World War III at least. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Hey, consider going to mypillow.com right now and get your pet a pet bed, just like my beloved Delta has right here in my office. Not only can you get pet beds, but you can get sheets, towels, blankets, and so much more. Slippers, sandals, robes, beach towels. It just goes on and on. But please go to mypillow.com and be sure to use the promo code B66. When you do, not only will you receive savings, but a generous percentage of each purchase comes back to continue supporting this 24/7 free broadcast outlet. We need your support. Hey, look, we're entrepreneurs, just like my friend Mike Lindell. We all need your support, and you're getting quality products at the same time. So please go to mypillow.com and use the promo code B66. Mike always has amazing specials going right there at MyPillow. So check out whatever those specials might be today. You never know. Mike's always changing it up and making new offers right there at mypillow.com. But be sure to use the promo code B66. All right, welcome back. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com. Don't forget about our fall conference coming up. Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th, here in the beautiful Mid-South, outside of 30 minutes outside of Memphis in Collierville, Tennessee. Very nice community. Germantown, Carterville rated the first and second safest communities in Tennessee. So the airport's been remodeled, easy airport to get in and out of. You come on over to Collierville or drive in and stay in Collierville. Get your hotel in Collierville, get your hotel in Germantown. They're on our website, worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com, full details. Thursday night banquet, that's optional, Thursday night banquet. We have a keynote speaker, Hadia, former Muslim Christian, worked in the intelligence arena. Fascinating conversation with her last night, telling stories about how during the George W. Bush administration, she was warning about some of these Islamic jihadi preaching individuals. And the Secret Service picked her up, put her in a black SUV, took her to some building and questioned her for 3 hours. She was trying back then to warn about some of the same people she said are hovering around the Trump administration, trying to play the same game they did during the George W. Bush administration. You probably should go there when you have time, worldviewtube.com, and listen to that interview last night from Hadia. She'll be our keynote speaker at our Worldview Foundation banquet that Thursday night, October 2nd. Again, there's only 350 seats available for the whole conference. And we've cut the price down to $99, substantially lower by moving it away from a big resort, which we loved and appreciated, but we wanted to cut the cost. There are only 350 seats. Hope you'll join us October 3rd and 4th. Full details, worldviewstore.com. Now, here's what Andrew Jackson said about taxes and bureaucracy. Quote, It would be taking one's property and giving it to another. Such would be the unavoidable result of a rule of equality, end quote. Diversity, equity. Diversity, equity, and all that goes along with that DEI. Inclusion. Equity. You got to have equity. How do you get equity? How do you get equity? Someone says, I got a lot of equity in my house. Well, how did you get that? You paid. You paid your house off, or you paid a lot of your house off. You paid a lot toward the principal. And you got a, I don't know, let's say you got a $300,000 house and you got $200,000 in equity. You worked. You saved. You did without. You sacrificed to pay down that mortgage, or maybe pay it all the way off. You got a lot of equity. Work. Today, people want equity as shareholders, stakeholders, a stakeholder society. Equity. Really? What did you do? You didn't work. Where's your work? Everything should stem on work. That's the foundation of a free market system. Work. The Bible says, put your hand to the plow, gain wealth, money, equity, over the course of time. People today want equity with no work. That's called socialism. That's what Andrew Jackson warned about. Look at here again. It would be talking about redistribution of wealth and taxation. It would be taking one man's property, giving it to another. Such would be the unavoidable result of a rule of equality. Everyone has to be equal. Everyone has to have equity. Everyone has to be a stakeholder. What do you mean by stakeholder? Well, we all live on this planet. Okay, that's nice. Well, big business comes to town and it puts off pollution. That damages all of us as stakeholders. Really? Really? We're one of the cleanest countries in the world when it comes to pollution. This is all made up propaganda. This is all emotionalism. This is all trying to have a moral foundation by which to justify tyranny. A moral foundation by which to justify tyranny and bigger government. That's what it is. They always have to try to tie it to some moral cause. Well, this is about race. Really? I didn't think we had a racial problem really in this country compared to what maybe it once was. We've made great strides. Until, of course, Barack Obama came in and wanted to tell us how racist of a country we were, despite all of our great improvements, repentance, and I would even say restitution. They have to try to tie their tyranny, their socialism, their globalism to moral causes that are, in fact, actually immoral. It's immoral to pit one person against another over their so-called race when there's only one race. It's immoral to accuse one race, one people group, with crimes against another that never occurred or haven't occurred in the last several generations, and therefore the people alive today have no guilt. It's not moral to worship nature. It's not moral to elevate nature over man, whereas man now is considered a blight, expendable, because nature is to be worshiped. That's not moral. But never be fooled by the morality of their causes, their so-called morality of their causes. That's all a facade to guilt people into thinking that they are part of some kind of movement, religiosity, political, social, spiritual, that is greater than them and beyond this life. And it's all fake. It's a fraud. It's a lie. What else did Jackson say? The possession and use of the property out of which this surplus was created belonged to the people. But the government has transferred its possession to incorporated banks whose interest and effort is to make large profits out of its use. That's right. Look at how much land the federal government has scooped up. Look how much the federal government now owns and then uses as capital by which to leverage more money for more expansion of government. Who does that belong to? It should belong to the people. Being confiscated by the federal government so they can put it on their books and thereby justify more expansive credit for more expansive government. He said it would, quote, be easy to show how by the operation of such principles, the large states of the Union would not only have to contribute their just share toward the support of the federal government, but also to have to bear in some degree the taxes necessary to support the governments of their smaller sisters. He was not a fan of taxation. He was a tariff guy. He was not a fan of big government. He was very much a small government guy. Remember, Andrew Jackson's the one that did away with the central bank. Congress is only authorized to levy taxes, to pay debts, provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. There is no such provision as would authorize Congress to collect together the property of the country under the name of revenue for the purposes of dividing it equally or unequally among the states or the people. Now, they spoke in a very distinct and specific way in Andrew's day. But if you read that again, he's talking about the property of you and me. There is no such provision as would authorize Congress to collect together the property of the country. Your property, mine. Your money is your property. Taxing your work, your skill, your trade, that's your property. And to do so under the name of revenue, for the purpose of dividing it equally or unequally among the states or the people, he said that's wrong. How much money do we take from the people today in various states, and not just to give it to another state, but to give it to National Public Radio, National Public Television, a half a billion dollars a year, 500 million. Why? It is theft. It is organized theft. To steal from my listeners, from Americans, to turn around and give it to a disgusting, un-American, anti-God organization like National Public Radio and Television. That's my belief. That's my opinion. That's my biblical conviction. But that's not even the worst of it. That would actually be quite benign and maybe in some degree excusable compared to how far it goes, how bad it gets. That includes funding terrorist organizations, establishing and building terrorist organizations, creating groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, funding the Taliban, funding governments that want the murder of millions of Americans, stealing from the American people to pay nations and groups that want us exterminated as a people and a nation. How evil is that? What would Andrew Jackson and the other founders have to say if they came back today? You would think this would be something that is eagerly and aggressively discussed among the average American, but it's not. The average American, a farmer, eagerly awaited the arrival of the newspaper to read the Federalist Papers, to read these documents being written about this new document, the Constitution. And the average person, being a farmer, clearly understood what it meant. But today we're told by the intelligentsia, you can't understand the Constitution. It's for the lawyers. No, the farmers understood it. The average American discussed it. Yet today, you can hardly engage most Americans outside of an audience like this. You can hardly engage them in a conversation like we're having today. They have zero interest. And that, my friends, is why we're in this mess. Apathy. Apathy. Passivity. A decrease of knowledge, which is power. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. All right, before we go to Andy Woods, we were having a hard time reaching him, but we have now located the good doctor. But before we go to him, I got to finish with two more great quotes by Andrew Jackson. Quote, the state legislatures, instead of studying to restrict their state expenditures to the smallest possible sum, will claim credit for their profusion and harass the general government for increased supplies. And then we hear, we need more for the children, for education. Yeah, is that what you call it? Grooming? That's now called education, don't you know? Go to school and get a good education. Get groomed. And maybe while you're there, who knows, you might get molested by the teacher. Go off to school now. Because that's exactly what you see happening. I don't know if you guys track it, but the number of teachers engaging in sexual conduct with the students is staggering. Staggering. I'm sure it's probably not that shocking to the younger generation because of desensitization, but to us who, and there are others older than me, but to someone that's 56, this kind of thing did not go on. We need more money for education. No, you don't. It's hardly education. You need more money for indoctrination? Doesn't really take a lot of money to educate somebody. It really doesn't. I mean, how many textbooks do you really need? We used the same textbooks when we were kids. Many of us, we would get textbooks handed out to us at the beginning of the school year. And you know what a lot of us would do when we would get that history book handed to us that had been used for 10 years? What would you do? What's one of the first things you would do when they would hand you that biology book or history book? What's the first thing you would do? You knew that book had been around in the school for several years. What's the first thing you would do? A lot of you, you're answering the question right now, and you're getting it 100% right because you did it. You would open the flap and you would read who used to have that book because they would put their name down. And there'd be a list of names of whose history book is this? Oh, this belonged to this, because you'd lose it, right? At some point, you'd set it down, and another student or a teacher would pick it up, open the flap, see the latest student's name, and say, oh, hey, John, run this down the hall to Chris. He left his book. How'd you know it was Chris's book? He wrote his name in the front and a list. And we know this year, this date. That's this year. That's this school year. Take the book to him. And you'd open the flap and you'd go through it and you'd say, hey, your brother used this textbook 3 years ago, or your sister, right? How hard is it to educate? You use the same textbooks pretty much year in, year out. No, not today. We got to get them all a fancy tablet. We got to have state-of-the-art computer rooms. And the government keeps asking for more and more and more. They keep taxing more and more. Andrew Jackson said it would happen. He says, quote, practically there would be soon be but one taxing power, and that vested in a body of men far removed from the people, in which the farming and mechanic interest would scarcely be represented. Well, that would be your average worker then, farmer, someone in the mechanical area, fixing things, building things. They don't care what the farmer and mechanic thinks. Do you think they care what the farmer and mechanic thinks in America today? Anybody think they really care what anyone thinks in any occupation anymore? No. The bankers could care less what you and I think. Most politicians could care less what we think. Oh, they tell you they do at election time, but there are not many that really do care. Now, there are some. I know some of them. And I know a few of them that I think are very genuine people. I really do. And I'm so thankful they're there. I've interviewed Ron Johnson a few times. I've been with him in person a couple weeks ago when interviewing. I think he's a sincere man. I really do know quite well Congressman Glenn Grothman. I think he's a very sincere man. I think he's there for the right reasons. And there are a few others up there that I think that I've interviewed that I think are legitimately people trying to do the best by their constituents in the Constitution. But they're the minority. The special interest, the money lobbied, the big bankers, they don't care about us. It says one comedian said, it's a club and you're not in it. It's a club and you and I are not in it. They're here just to tax us, and they use the power of the government to abuse us, to keep us in line, to terrorize us. They don't really even need our taxation money anymore. They can just print it. They tax us so they can remind us who's really in charge. They keep the IRS around so that if somebody becomes too big, they can terrorize them with audits, maybe even throw them in jail. And there's not a one of us that they could not throw in prison with as many federal laws as there are in the books. You and I are breaking laws all the time and don't even know it. That's by design. He went on to say, the states would gradually lose their purity as well as their independence. They would not dare to murmur at the proceedings of the general government, meaning the federal government. That's how they called it, then the general government. They wouldn't murmur. They wouldn't complain. You're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. Lest they should lose their supplies. All would be merged in a practical consolidation, cemented by widespread corruption, which could only be eradicated by one of those bloodied revolutions which occasionally overthrow the despotic systems of the old world. End quote. There you go. And he said in his farewell address, quote, Congress has no right under the Constitution to take money from the people unless it's required to execute some of the specific powers entrusted to the government. And if they raise more than is necessary for such purposes, it is an abuse of the power of taxation and unjust and And it's unjust and oppressive. And that's where we're at, folks. We live in an oppressive nation, but we have been taught this is liberty. The founders would come back and say, liberty? Have your people been so demoralized, so debased, so undereducated as to think that slavery is liberty? Yep, that's right. We have. And the people that lift a voice up to tell you that you're in slavery, you call them conspiracy theorists? You call them extreme? You call them radical? Who's the real radical? The founders would be stunned at what we, the people, have tolerated. There's more of us than there is of them. But there's not very many of us when it comes to common sense, virtue, courage, understanding. There's many in body, but few in mind. Because at the end of the day, that's what this has been. A battle for the mind. And I hate to tell you, they're winning, we're losing on that front. The good news is we snatched some from the fires of hell. Maybe some here, some there. We win that ultimate battle for the mind, which is really the spiritual battle, to win hearts and minds. But overall, broad is the path to destruction. Narrow is the way, and few who find it. The battle for the mind in all areas. But certainly the battle for the heart and the mind when it comes to truth, to Jesus, to the gospel, to the Bible. It's a massive battle for the mind. And by and large, that's being lost. And at the forefront stands Christianity. Modern day Christianity. In many ways, it has led the way in lack of education, lack of biblical instruction, worldview training. Somewhere along the way, we took biblical Christianity and we Americanized it, and it lost its spirit and its power. And we became slaves to an oppressive, unjust, and unbiblical, tyrannical government that no longer rewards the righteous, punishes the wicked, but punishes the righteous, and rewards the wicked, and enriches the wicked, and promotes the wicked, and advances the wicked. Nothing is going to get us out of this. As much as I want the Trump administration to be successful, this is right now just simply buying time. There are not enough Americans that want to think, that want to reason, that want to learn. There aren't. Only thing that's going to get us out of this is the return of the Lord. And hopefully that'll happen before World War III, because that every week seems to be ratcheting up. And talk about people that don't see it and aren't preparing. You would think right now everybody and their grandmother would be stocking away whatever they can get their hands on to prepare for shortages, power outages, and all the other things that would come if we go to World War III. But nope. Eat, drink, and be merry. Happy days are here. We're back. We are so far from back. Joining me now, we did find him, Dr. Andy Woods. Dr. Woods, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for joining us.
Brandon, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I don't know how much of my commentary you've heard, but have you heard enough to comment on it?
I heard a lot of it. I I particularly appreciated your comments about our public educational system. I have some exams that go back to about the 8th grade, from the 1800s. And to be honest with you, I couldn't answer a single question on the exam. And I like what you said about the Federalist Papers. Today, people look at the Federalist Papers as if, only you have to be in a master's program or something like that to understand the Federalist Papers. Yet, the Federalist Papers were written for of New York, who at that time had about an 8th grade or so education, and they could understand the Federalist Papers just fine. So this is just a huge indictment of our whole educational bureaucracy. We were so smart.
Hold right there. We'll be right back. Don't go away. We'll be right back. We're not changing courses. Now, we are who we are. We're committed to the truth that we are committed to. Worldview Tube is a broadcast network that I started in 2006, but it's based on my 35 years as an author and speaker and commentator. Worldview Tube is here to defend the truth of a Christian worldview. And we believe we can apply it to all areas of life, like law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, major issues.
At worldviewtube.com, we provide news from around the globe that isn't typically covered by mainstream media. Visit worldviewtube.com to watch our experts and analysts discuss all your favorite topics on our 24/7 live stream. Explore our extensive collection of unfiltered and uncensored content from 35 years of production. Go to worldviewtube.com today. Also find us on all of these major platforms and download our Worldview Tube mobile app.
All right, welcome back. We're glad you're with us. We've only got about 8 minutes. We're going to move real quick. Dr. Woods, I want to go right away because you're an attorney, pastor. I want to go to this. As an attorney, put your attorney hat on, if you would. I read this the other day and I thought, wow, we're in a constitutional crisis. 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals judge criticizes the Supreme Court for blocking Trump's deportation. I think we're in a constitutional crisis. What say you?
Well, it's funny you say that. That's the exact same words that I used on our podcast that just got dropped this morning. Recorded yesterday. I said we're in a constitutional crisis where one branch of the government, the unelected judiciary, is putting handcuffs on another branch of government for just fulfilling its constitutional executive functions and doing what the people voted Trump in to do. And I call that a constitutional crisis. I mean, there's a reason we call these judges district judges. That's the lowest level judge in the federal system. They're supposed to render decisions in their own district. And here we have a situation where the lowest level can issue nationwide injunctions and put handcuffs on the presidency. So if that's not a constitutional crisis, I don't know what one is.
Talk about education and the war on people who want to think and have a Christian worldview. Wrongly accused, Trump's education department rescinds Biden's $37 million fine on a Christian university. Grand Canyon University, the biggest university in the nation, was applied that was applied under former President Joe Biden's administration in 2023. The biggest fine, I guess, ever, right? What did the Biden regime accuse this Christian university of doing, Dr. Woods?
They accused them of exaggerating the cost of their, they made it look like, according to the Biden administration, that their PhD program was more affordable, than it really was. But the truth of the matter is they didn't apply the same standard to any Ivy League school. I mean, this is something that they just did to this particular school. And as you indicated, it is the largest Christian university in the United States of America. And so because of this unfair standard, it just shows you that the Biden regime, had it out for Christian colleges. And the Trump administration correctly and rightfully once they came to power, reversed this and just rescinded this, draconian fine that the Biden Department of Education placed on this Christian school.
I'm concerned, folks. This all can come back very quickly, if we're not engaged. How about this one, Dr. Woods? Rabbis debate settling for prayer at Western Wall versus Temple Mount worship. Tell me about that one.
Well, this one's significant because we have in our belief system a third temple on the horizon. We know that has to be up and running halfway through the tribulation period, albeit Daniel 9, verse 27. And so what we're seeing today is a greater hunger within Israel to rebuild that temple. And this deals with Jerusalem Day. And typically what the Jews did is they went to the Western Wall to pray. Well, now there's a whole group of them that say, we don't want to go to the Western Wall anymore. We want to go to the Temple Mount. And this article brings up how it provoked kind of a massive discussion, within their rabbis. And so this is sort of a new development that you're seeing. You're seeing more and more Jews interested in doing their celebrations on the Temple Mount and not just, at the Western Wall. I did discover something else, which I don't have there in their stack of stuff, but it sort of speaks to the imminent third temple that's on the horizon. And here's the headline. It says Smotrich, who's one of the officers there within the nation of Israel. It says Smotrich vows to rebuild the temple during Jerusalem Day celebrations. So that's hot off the press. And so here we go. This is what we've anticipated for a long time. Temple number 3 is on the horizon of being rebuilt, we believe.
Which, again, if you're pre-trib, means the rapture's got to be occurring pretty quickly.
Yeah, these are signs for the tribulation. And if the rapture of the church comes before the tribulation period, and we believe it does, the rapture is coming even faster. It's the equivalent of saying the signs of Christmas indicate that Thanksgiving is near.
How about this one, Dr. Woods? Diplomats prepare ground for June conference on two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. Where are they going to put this Palestinian state?
Well, the true Palestinian state, when you look at the conclusions of the San Remo Accords, etc., post-World War I, was supposed to be Jordan. But they've thrown that model out a long time ago, and they want to put this Palestinian state within Israel. They want to take away what's called the West Bank, better called Judea and Samaria, and hand that over to the Palestinians, which will take Israel and reduce its width to less than 10 miles and put them in a militarily defenseless position. By the way, how well did the Palestinian state work for Gaza? Gaza was supposed to be a Palestinian state, right? And that's nothing more than terrorist, a beachhead for terrorist activity. So why in the world would a two-state solution work for Judea and Samaria? The whole thing is insane. But there's a big UN conference coming up in June where this is the number one, item on the agenda.
And I noticed that Saudi Arabia, France and Saudi Arabia are saying this needs to be a concrete deal. Okay, how are you going to get the Abraham Accords going if Saudi Arabia is now for a Palestinian state, and that means Israel has to give up land? Isn't America inviting God's judgment if we push that?
Yeah, if we sign on to this and push it, and I'm hoping we won't. I don't think the Trump administration wants to do this, but God forbid if we sign on and push this, we're under severe judgment, and it'll be the outworking of Joel 3 verse 2, which will trigger God. God says he's going to enter judgment against the nations in the last days because they have, quote, divided my land, close quote. That's his land. We're on the world is on the precipice of dividing. And this is going to unleash the very wrath of God.
Yep. Dr. Andy Woods, folks, thanks for being with us. Hope you'll stay tuned for Crosstalk, vcy.org. Thank you. Take care.
This has been.
And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and Worldview Tube. So, Dr. Woods, explain again where they think they're going to do this on the ground. Oh, he's on radio side, so he can't do that. All right. So, before we go, guys, I want to remind you that we are working on our brand new history channel. We've already got one documentary up. The one on the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. We have more coming. We have trips planned this fall. And we're going to be going to some very interesting places. Back to D.C. the middle of September. Going to more historical locations and filming. And we're going to be going and filming a reenactment of the Civil War. A reenactment of the Civil War. We're going to be doing several TV specials on the history of the Civil War. Many Americans have been lied to. Remember me earlier in the program saying that the elite, the power elite, like to hide their agenda, wrap their agenda with a moral cause? Well, they did that during the Civil War. And tried to tell you it was about slavery, don't you know? Slavery was on its way out. Many of the founders had already said openly, it's got to go. They would not have done the 3/5 rule if it was about advancing slavery. Americans have been lied to about that. It was largely about economics, money, the economic war between the North and the South, the bankers. Oh, yeah, we're going to get into it with documentation. Now, the average American is going to push back because they're so brainwashed. They're so brainwashed. Here's another reason why they push back. They don't want to think. Oh, so much easier to believe it was about slavery. I can understand that. I can understand that. That's something I can even understand, says the average American. Let's just keep it about that. Because to say otherwise means I actually have to think, and I have to try to figure this out and reason and obtain facts and understand it. And I'm sorry, I'm too lazy for that. I got a football game to watch. So a lot of Americans will push back against it because they're so dumbed down. They're so brainwashed that they recoil at thinking they somehow were lied to. That my teacher told me it was about slavery. My college professor. So we're going to get pushback. But I've been researching this for quite some time. To the point now I want to make it into some documentary, some TV specials. So we're going to do some filming and some historical documentation will be done. And we're even going to go watch the reenactment of a Civil War. We got all kinds of cool stuff coming because Americans need to learn history. Remember we were talking a while ago about that battle for the mind? Yeah. Includes understanding the worldviews, the ideas, the philosophies that have brought us to where we're at. Even if we can't overcome some of these things, do you still want to be trapped in lies? I don't. If someone put me in prison, I would still want to know truth. I would still want to study and know the truth because I would want to at least not have my mind caged, right? Remember that commercial? Was it the mind is a terrible thing to waste? That's exactly what they've done. They've wasted away the average American's mental capacity. Self-limited mental capacity. Most Americans don't want to think. They have put a governor on their brain. You know what a governor is, right? You put a governor on a go-kart so your kid doesn't go too fast and get hurt. So that the go-kart could do 40, but we're going to make it where it only goes about 15 miles an hour. That's what the average American has done. They have willingly put a governor on their brain. And when something reaches a level, the level of that governor, they're like, nope, that requires too much thinking. Sorry, not interested. Where is the clicker? I gotta watch that football game. Watch of fat guys pushing each other over on painted carpet. Now that I can get into.
Built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I want to just make a point about the victims here. Sarah Milgram is a Kansas City girl,